Welcome back to my channel, everybody. This is Nail Gun Nelly, and today we are going to show you how I went from this to this, making a faux living wall. Like with any feature wall, you want to start out by removing all of the baseboards and, if there are doors, any trim around those so that you start out with a blank canvas. To do this, you score the caulking and then pry them off and then give it a good cleaning. I love reusing things that people normally would throw out. This grid came from a ceiling that held in fluorescent lighting that my father-in-law found when he was redoing a kitchen. I immediately had this idea of a living wall, although there was a little struggle finding placement at first.
I mean, how can those outlets be placed right there?
But once I came to terms with the fact that they did get placed right there, I discussed it with my husband and he came up with the idea, why don't you just flip it over? What a brilliant idea, and it worked perfectly. It fit perfectly just above the outlets, and then I just needed to address the top section. So I decided to push it all the way over to the door so that it would act as that part of the framing. And then I was just gonna have to add 2 more for the sides and the tops of the doors. And then, of course, I had to visualize that it was gonna work without it getting sucked up into this huge fan, and added a tree. It worked, so I moved on. I went to my miter saw, and I do have a how to use a miter saw video if you are interested or scared of one. And I measured these 2 sections and cut out molding that I took off the top in order for this grid to fit, and then turned to my Kreg pocket hole jig, where I was able to make pocket holes to seamlessly secure these pieces in. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do a Tools 101 on the Kreg pocket hole jig. I would be happy to make one. You can see here that I had a piece of green tape, and normally there is a little stopper, but mine broke, and so I still have yet to go buy one, but eventually I'll get that taken care of. When you have pocket holes, you use a square bit like this, and now that I have them all drilled and ready to go, I pulled the grid back down off the wall and took the 2 pieces that I just cut and made pocket holes in and secured them using wood glue and 1 1/4, since this material is 3/4 inches thick. Once those were all secured, I hoisted it back up to the wall, got it in place, and then took my stud finder and found all of the studs that would land behind it. This is a super basic stud finder, but the absolute best. Once you have them all marked, make sure it's level, and it'd be really nice if you get a helping hand, and then secure them all to the studs using 2.5-inch screws to make sure that it is really secure and flush to the wall. Next, you want to make sure you caulk all of the seams where the grid touches the wall. And the best trick is to have your finger right at the tip of the caulk gun and smooth it as it comes out to make way less of a mess. Baby wipes are also super helpful for this process. Once that was all complete, it was time to move on to finally picking a paint color for this entire wall. I was working with Dunn-Edwards DURA for this project, and these are the 5 different paint samples that they sent me. It's really cool peel and stick so that you can move them around to different areas and see how the light changes the color. This paint is exclusively sold online, so I made my choice, and you'll have to keep watching to see what we go with. I then finally got the rest of my molding and put a baseboard here, and then framed out the rest of the door, and then I cut these square cardboard boxes that we will come back to in a second. And then I used my favorite Bondo all-purpose putty to fill in the gaps that were in between all of the seams of the wood that I had to add in to complete the framing. This is a 2-part mixture that you just kind of mix up real quick, but you have to work quickly and in small batches because it dries fast. Once it hardens, then you use a sander to get the seam really smooth, and sometimes, like this time, I had to do a second coat, sand that down, and then we were ready to prime. But of course, before you paint, you need to make sure that you're working with a clean surface, so I took a mixture of vinegar and water and just wiped down everything to get all the dust and debris off. I then used the primer from Dunn-Edwards DURA and put a coat across everything because we were going for a monochromatic look on this wall. Once that was all applied, I then finally got my color, and we went with Dunn-Edwards DURA Metal Fringe, which was the first sample on the wall. It is such a cool color that at times looks kind of a gray color, but then in other light it looks almost like a bronzy brown. Just like the tile that I used in this space, I loved the variation this color gave off, and I thought it was a perfect mix of bold darkness but with a good warm hue of the brown colors. Because this is a dark color, even though it did go on really well for the first coat, I wanted to give a second coat just to make sure that there was no spots that were missed. And like I said before, I wanted a monochromatic look on this wall where the door, trim, everything was the same colors so that this next step would really pop. And that takes us back to the cardboard boxes that I cut out. I went and got a variety of greenery that I got from Hobby Lobby mostly, and cut them up to put across all of these cardboard boxes. I wanted a faux living wall because this garage is completely dark with only one window, but it's probably 20 feet away. So there was no way it was gonna actually survive, and it wasn't at my house, so I couldn't depend on somebody else to actually water them. So how I started was taking this green turf and I cut them into equal parts and covered the majority of the center of these cardboard boxes. I then took all of the different greenery and kind of spread it out so that I could make sure there was a good mix of dark and light colored greens on each square. I attached everything just using hot glue, but quickly realized that I should probably paint the cardboard the same color as the walls so that just in case there was some areas that were missed or not covered, it would blend in better. I also did it on the cardboard because I wasn't sure if it was something that they were gonna. I didn't really know what I was doing here, but I just started basically applying different chunks of greenery in all of the corners of each square, and then slowly added it into all of the dead space and a little bit on the turf just to add some dimension. Then once I had the majority of everything covered, I left it at that, and I wanted to take them over to the space so that I could make any changes or add more once I got there. So a little trick to if you're in the middle of a painting project is to keep your wet paint brushes in a plastic baggie and put them in the fridge, and you can come back and they will still be wet and ready to go when you need to make another coat, which I came back the next day and did some touch-up work across the top and made sure my line was straight. And then I made sure it was dry and added all my outlet plates, removed the tape, and we were looking pretty good.
So I am just using 1-inch screws that I started out with the cardboard, and I'm just gonna put them in, and the green filler will cover them. That way, if we want to take them off, we just unscrew them real quick.
So I started at the top and secured them with the 1-inch screws and worked my way down, and then I added in more greenery where there was bald spots. Then once that was done, I cut up these gem tiles and filled in this little gap, and then it was pretty much done and we were ready to move on to the TV. The plan was to mount the TV in this gap right here to the left. So we ended up getting a 43-inch TV, and I had to install a flush mount because I wanted it to not be able to be pulled out away from the wall. TV mounts are pretty simple. They come with everything you need to install it. So you attach it to the back of the TV first, find the studs, and then attach this to the studs. And this one was pretty easy. It just slid right on and I got it perfect.
That's pretty dang good.
Once that was in, it was really nice that the plug was right below this greenery that I hid with a little faux plant. And then I decided to add a little LED strip lighting behind just to give it a little more character. And boom, look at that. Beautiful lighting in the back. And now we went from this to this. A faux living wall in our home gym. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.